Are you planning to study abroad soon? In today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 key things you need to do before you embark on your semester abroad journey. Hi everyone, it's Kimber, the Study Abroad Specialist. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad that you are here. We're going to be talking about the 5 key things that you need to do to make sure that you have a smooth semester abroad journey before you get started. Obviously, there are more than 5, but we're going to cover 5 today. I did want to point out before we begin that I have a freebie download for you that's going to be really useful. So if you click into the description below, you're going to be able to see the goal setting, and basically it's kind of an outline of what I call the last day of study abroad. We will talk about that a little bit later in the video. But with this, it basically is going to allow you to plan out some of the goals that you want to accomplish during your study abroad journey. So if you had a chance to download my starter worksheet, so when you were beginning this journey, perhaps maybe you had a chance to download that, then you know what some of your goals are, but now it's really time to finalize them. And also too, there is a practice that I will talk about in number 5, where we go through planning your last day of study abroad. So just want to point that out. It is absolutely free. It's in the description box. So for number 1, the number 1 thing that you definitely want to do before you head off on your study abroad journey, I know that as I'm filming this video, it's summertime, so a lot of students are going to be obviously wrapping up for their semester, their quarter, depending on where you are in the world. And maybe you are doing a semester abroad during the summer, that's going to be great. But even if you're looking at this in the fall or the spring, it doesn't matter. These are going to be important no matter when you're doing them. But the first thing that you want to do before you head off on your semester abroad, or even if you're going longer, is to make sure that you close any loops, any open loops on campus. So this could mean making sure that maybe you meet with your academic advisor one more time. It could making sure that, for example, if you're coming back the following semester after you're done, that if you haven't already registered for classes, that you at least know what classes you need to take, or you at least understand what that process is going to look like. I know for a lot of students, if they are studying abroad during a semester and they may have to register for the next semester, they want to make sure that they at least have everything planned out in advance so that they don't have to spend a lot of time, because again, a lot of times when these registration portals open, everyone's kind of in it, and you want to make sure that you at least have an advantage because you're already in a time difference crunch. And so you want to make sure you have that sealed up as well. For students who are, let's say you are living in student-based housing somewhere and you're going to need to take a break from that, and maybe you want to come back to where you're living, that means that you would have already closed the loop with your landlord or whoever is going to be overseeing that, so that you can make sure that if you have a contract that you need to sign in advance, you've already gone through and done that. If you have stuff that you need to move out, even if you're going to be returning, they want to make sure that you move it out. Maybe they're going to be subleasing it or whatever that looks like, that you have that all wrapped up. So that's going to be really important to make sure that you close all those loops, particularly on campus, because again, even though you are just technically probably a phone call away or even a Zoom call away, there are lots of things that happen as you begin studying abroad, and time just gets away from you anyway. And so you want to make sure that all those things are taken care of. So for number 2, this is very important. You want to make sure that you are making copies of all key documents that you will need during your study abroad journey. It is going to range the gamut. I know that I did touch on this in day 28 or 29, I can't remember now, of my Learn How to Study Abroad in 30 Days series. If you have not checked that out, I will link that in a card above. But you want to make copies of every single key document that you could have. So copy of your passport. You don't have to make copies of every single page in the passport, but definitely the part that has all the key information. It's usually page 1 or 2 or 3, depending on what country you're in for your passport. If you have a passport card, you also want to make a copy of that. If you have driver's license or identification, you want to make a copy of that. Even your home school ID, I would make a copy of that. You want to have any important record. So if you need to have a copy of your transcript thus far, or if you need to have a copy of your immunizations, all these key things, you want to have them in paper copies. This is not something that a lot of people really think about in today's age. You're like, oh, I have it on my phone, I can just do that. But it is really important to have paper copies. Paper copies do not fail. A cell phone can fail, iPad can, break and get dirty or whatever. And so you want to make sure that you have paper copies. What I like to say for students is that you want to make 3 copies minimum, and you want to make sure that you leave one at home, a full set of everything that we just talked about. So ID, passport, a copy of the visa that was issued to you, a copy of any of the key documents that you might have needed for your program. You want to make a packet of that and have that at home with family or with your parents or whoever you can trust at home. And then you also want to potentially give a copy to, let's say, a friend or maybe someone even at school. You could just leave it with an academic advisor, someone that would be there. And then you also have a copy for yourself that you're just going to maybe put in a brown envelope, manila envelope, and just put it in the bottom of your suitcase. It's just there for safety. But that way, if you lose your passport or if you suddenly need to have your driver's license for some reason and you've lost that or whatever it is, you at least have the copy there. And I know that it can be tricky with using copied documents. I know particularly, for example, and I don't know if this is true in all countries, but I know that here in the US, with birth certificates in particular, they're always looking, when you're doing official things, they're always looking for the seal, and they can actually, there's perforated way on the back of most birth certificates to be able to feel for it. And there's just a copy, they won't use that. So I know that, for example, if you got into a situation like that and they're like, we need the original documentation, that you would still need to find a way to get that sent to you or to have it verified some way. But even if you just had a copy of your passport, and let's say you lost your real passport, like the real in-hand thing, and then you needed help getting it reissued, it would be a lot easier to have a copy and go into the embassy or the consulate of where you are, of your home country, of where you are within the study abroad country, and say, like, this is who I am. They can obviously see it's who you are. You haven't faked the copy. You can't do that. But they can at least be able to help you along a little bit more, and that at least puts things in motion. Whereas if you didn't have the copy at all, you just walk in and you're like, I lost my passport, this is who I am. They do have ways of verifying it, but it just takes so much longer. And particularly for things like passports and visas, which are usually within the passport, if you lose that, it's going to be at a loss to you, because you need that a lot of times when you are studying abroad. A lot of times driver's license won't translate over, or identification cards won't translate over. So the passport is kind of the key to the world when you are traveling the world. So you definitely want to make sure that you make copies of all those things and just put it in a packet. And like I said, 3 copies is usually going to work. Give it to family member or a parent, give one to an academic advisor to just hold on for safety, and then just put one in your suitcase. And then you can just basically forget about it. Just make sure that if there's anything that's going to be really sensitive, that maybe once you get to your location, if there's a safe in your room, you can put it in there. Or again, just make sure that it is put somewhere where people can't easily get a hold of it. We don't want people getting your information really quickly. Even your roommates, you want to make sure that you are just safeguarding that information, but that you have it there so that you have it on hand if something goes wrong. So for number 3, this is another one that a lot of people, as they are advising students on study abroad, do not talk about. I always love to talk about this. This was something that was very helpful for me when I was first getting started with study abroad, and something that I know that a lot of my students have found helpful. So you definitely want to notify any of your banking or financial institutions. This goes for your parents as well. I know that a lot of students, you're going to be using your parents' debit card, you may be on your parents' credit card. You want to make sure that you are notifying all these institutions. The reason for this is that, particularly over the past 15 years, banks have gotten, thankfully, a lot more sophisticated at catching fraud. And I know even when I was first getting started with study abroad back in the earlier 2000s, they had already started this, but things have gotten a lot more sophisticated. And so what you don't want to do is you want to make sure that you are not creating something where you're going to limit yourself to access the money. You're going to need your money while you study abroad. And so what this does is, it basically is called an identification note. Some banks call it just an ID note, or some banks just call it just a cliff note on the account, whatever they call it. When you call in, or you can do it online, a lot of times you will be specifically able to tell what it is. But I always recommend, if it's your first time, to just call in. The people on the line, first of all, a lot of times people don't even call in anymore, so they're excited to hear from you. And I think that this translates over no matter if you are, let's say, in the UK and you're coming to another country, or you are in Italy going somewhere. Most banks worldwide have something like this now. So what you're going to want to do is you just call in and say, you're going to give them a couple things. You're going to give them first, like, let them know what you're doing. So say even if you want to have your parents do it, say that, my student is going to be studying abroad in this location. So you're going to want to make sure that you notify them of what you're doing. So they are studying abroad, and then they're going to be going to this particular location, and they're going to be going for this long. And then they may ask you as well, do you plan to do other travel? If so, just give them a general idea of where you might be traveling. Of course, keeping in mind that you may not have it all figured out. So let's say that you are going to study abroad in Paris. So what you would do is you would let the bank know that you are going to study abroad in Paris, let's say from June to September. That's how long you're going. And then they may ask you, well, are you planning to travel other places while you're there? And then you would say, well, I'm not completely sure, but in the event that I do, you can either say that you're going to just let them know, or you can say, yes, during this time period, I may be traveling to Italy, I may be traveling to the UK, I may be traveling to Switzerland, and similar thing, no matter where you are going to be studying abroad, but just kind of give them a general idea. And then what's going to happen is they're going to put a note on any account that you're planning to use. So your debit card, your credit cards, same thing for your parents' cards if you're going to be using theirs, your checking account, whatever it is. And then that way, whenever a transaction comes through, there's going to be basically a note internally that pops up and says, okay, this is authentic. Because one of the things that happens if you don't do this is that, let's say, particularly for, I know the ATMs, this is where a lot of times people will get hit, because what happens is when you go to the ATM in particular, it's less, it does happen sometimes when you're making a transaction in the store or online. But with the ATM, it means that you would actively put in the numbers. And so what happens is if you don't have this note on your card, when you put in those numbers and you try to pull out from the ATM, it may let you do that, but it means that immediately it's going to flag up like, okay, this person's ATM is being used in Paris somewhere. And the last thing I knew, they were over in South Africa, or if you're here in the US, they were in the middle of Idaho. What are they doing in London? And so it immediately translates into fraud. And the bank's first purpose is to protect you. So what they're going to do is they're going to block your account, and that means that you're not going to have access to your money. And a lot of times you may not know that until you go in to make another transaction. Now I know that a lot of banks are really good now at emailing you or calling you really quickly and saying something weird is happening, can you give us a call back? But you want to make sure that you can eliminate that as much as possible. So definitely adding a notification to any banking institution or any accounts you're going to be using is going to be really useful for you, so that you don't have to worry about having it constantly blocked, and you can go on about your life and make sure you have access to your money while you're studying abroad. So definitely do that as well. So for number 4, I would say that if you are planning to study abroad soon, one of the things that you want to do is at least get prepared in the sense of finding a way that feels comfortable to you to connect with people that you're going to be studying abroad with. So this is really going to depend on what type of program you're doing. It's going to depend on even how long you're going. If you are going for the summer semester, maybe you do just want to wait and meet everyone then. But I know for a lot of students who are going to be studying abroad for a longer period of time, they start to feel anxious and they at least want to be able to connect with people. Now, it really just depends on your particular program. If you are doing a faculty-led or institutionalized program, then it's a little bit easier because you usually know who's going from your school. A lot of times they will do a pre-on-campus mixer or event so that everyone gets to meet each other, sort of a pre-departure orientation. Whereas if you're doing an independent program, or especially if you're doing sort of a self-paced program where you're going for a full degree, then this may not be as relative to you. But one of the things that I always like to say for students is that if you are someone who you are feeling really anxious and you really want to make connections before you go, then you are most likely going to want to find a way to connect with other people that are going to be going on the program. Now, there are a couple ways to do this. It depends on the program. There are some programs out there that basically release the names of everyone who's going on the program. I remember that when I was going on one of my London programs back in the day, before I started my graduate programs there, that I got the list of the names of everyone who was on my program. The reason why they did that, though, is because we were in a special program. We were in it was like 25 people in a internship program. And so that was different from the broader program that was there. And since we were on the same track, they wanted us to all get to know each other. And people did start emailing and sort of chatting. And of course, this is before social media, where you could just kind of socially stalk people, for lack of a better term. So some programs do that. There are some programs now, of course, that because of that very reason, because of the online safety, that unless a student has released, that you can send out their information to other people, that they may not list themselves. And so a lot of students opt out of that. They say that they would prefer not to have their information released out on a list somewhere. They would just rather meet people once they actually get there. There are also some programs that will create, let's say, things like Facebook groups or other online forums for people to be able to chat. So whatever you feel works best for you. I don't always like to push it on people. Again, I feel that whatever is going to be most comfortable for you, if you feel like it's going to be better to wait and meet people once you get there and sort of get the lay of the land, that's basically how I am. I don't just like to kind of jump in full force. For my extroverts out there, you may be different. You want to meet everyone. You want to hear everything about them. It really depends on what you're going to want to do for yourself. But I would just say, just kind of getting a sense of being part of the community before you go can always be a good thing. So even if you just want to, let's say the particular program you're doing has a Facebook group, even if you just want to be a lurker, we've all been a lurker at some point in some group. So even if you just want to join the group and maybe you just quickly introduce yourself, but you don't say anything else, at least you feel like you are part of the conversation. I know that what a lot of students will do is they will start to pre-plan things before they even get there. So, hey, I want to go on this trip to this place. Is anyone else interested for 3 days? Or I want to go see this show, or I want to go see this sports team. Is anyone else interested? So people start to communicate before they go. That can be a good way to just break the ice and sort of break the camaraderie, get started, so that when you get there, it's not weird, like, who's this person and what is all of this? So I would say that if you feel comfortable with it, at the bare minimum, just be a lurker in whatever group. And if you are someone who's a lot more outgoing and really enthusiastic about it, then just get involved and communicate with the group or whatever it is. And like I said, if that is not available to you with whatever program you're doing, then just make sure that you are a little bit more proactive in the beginning of your program when they do have on-site orientation and the mixers and everything. And I, of course, know that social mixers and sort of orientations look very different depending on what culture you are going to and where you're from and what your comfort level is. For example, if you are a student from around the world who's traveling to a place like the UK or to Germany or to the Middle East, that a lot of times those initial orientations, those initial mixers will be a lot more subdued, a lot more controlled in what people are kind of discussing. Maybe there's a prompt that everyone's talking about. People may be just generally introducing themselves. They may or may not tell you where they're from. There's different things like that that happen, versus if you are a student who is coming to study abroad here in the US, then you're going to need to be ready for that, because in our culture, people can be very invasive, at least in my opinion, too much, where it's like when you first meet someone, you don't need to know everything about them, but you will find that people are asking you where you're from, what do you do? We say jokingly, even, what's your social security number? Like, Americans tend to be in your face about everything. And so if you are going to be doing that and you are coming from a culture that is not similar to that, then you just want to have some things top of mind. And also too, as I always like to say, don't feel afraid to set boundaries. I am the queen of boundaries. I am pro boundaries. I think that that is very important. And so no matter what that feels like for you as you are getting started, and even as you go along within your program, and if you feel like the group is not really vibing that well, then don't feel afraid to not necessarily be part of that. There's nothing wrong with that. You have to do whatever you can do to self-sustain yourself. So I just like to say that it's okay to start out being a lurker, and then as you go along, if you are online, able to do that. But even once you get in person, if you feel like this is a good fit for me, I'm really comfortable, then you can open up more. But if you do not, then do whatever works best for you. But you at least want to engage, because again, you do have to study with these people. There may be some really cool people there that you would want to know for future things, networking and all of that. So just keep that all in consideration as you go along with meeting people and networking and getting started with the other people you're going to be studying with. So last but not least, for number 5, and this is related directly to the free handout that you have downloaded hopefully by now, but I want you to go through and not only set some goals, But I want you to basically write a letter to yourself. And I know that this sounds really weird, but what you're doing, and then it doesn't have to be super long. You can type it up on your iPad or on your phone. It doesn't have to be 5 pages. What I want you to do is, this is something that I practiced after my first study abroad program, where I really just wanted to be a little bit more reflective on things and to really kind of hold myself accountable for my goals. And so I wrote a letter to myself that it was a real letter. I physically wrote it. You can type it up, you can do whatever. I sealed it up and I kept it in my suitcase. And what I did was I read it to myself on the last day of my study abroad journey. And so for each time that I did it. But presumably that you are probably just maybe going to be studying abroad for the first time. This is your first time to do it. So what you're going to do is you just write yourself a note. And what it is it goes through and you are basically talking about what you did. So you are repeating your goals back to yourself, but as they are already complete. So if your goal was to go through and you wanted to become more efficient in the language, proficient, I can't even speak English today, proficient in the language that you were going to study. So maybe you were going to Italy and you wanted to learn more Italian. Maybe you wanted to make 3 close friends, and maybe your last goal was to each week try a different local cuisine. Then you can go through and write that letter to yourself and just talk about, here's what I experienced, here's what I saw, here's what I did. I know that it sounds really abstract and really strange to do it in advance, but it's really helpful to do that because, again, when you get to the end of your study abroad journey, you want to have looked back on things that you wanted to do. You're going to have lots of things that you didn't expect because that's how life works as well. But you want to make sure that you can look back and say, these were 3 or 4 things that I want to accomplish. This is how it went. And so it is a little bit of, I don't want to say manifesting, I'm not really into that, but I will just say that it is a way of looking forward and saying, this is what happened. It was amazing. It was more than what I thought. This is what I got to do with this, this, and this. So it's a way of being able to put your goals into action in the future, if you think of it that way. And once you look at that letter, you will be astounded because, of course, you're going to have more than just what was in the letter that you were able to do. But you can just look and say, hey, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, 5 months ago, when I first started on this journey, I am a different person. I'm a more improved person. And what I have in this letter does actually ring true. I have so many students that have done this. They are kind of like you probably are right now. Like, this sounds really weird, but once they actually do it, they come back to me and tell me that was so helpful for me to be able to say, like, oh my goodness, I did go through and do this, and then I did this, and I did this, and it was just how I would have planned it to be, even if it was a little bit better, even if it didn't turn out exactly how I had imagined. I was able to accomplish these different things. So I would highly recommend that you write that letter to yourself, in addition to the goal setting that we have on the form, so that you can just make sure that you are hitting all the boxes of what you want to do, because this is such an important time of your life. It's such a memorable time. Hopefully it's going to be an amazing experience for you. And there's nothing like having some documentation of what happened and what sort of went well, what didn't go so well. And if you have that in advance, you're able to reflect on that, it's only going to help your experience be a lot more stronger and be more useful for you in the future. Okay, and so I hope this video was useful for you. If you are planning to study abroad soon, you're watching this video, let me know where you're going. Leave a comment below. Just tell me where the country is, maybe where the city is. You don't have to give every single detail, but I'm just interested to know. I always like to know where students are going to study abroad. Also, too, please make sure to download the freebie. As we've talked about a couple times now, it's going to be really useful for you. In terms of other content, there are other content pieces below. So if you are just getting started with study abroad, but you landed on this video, welcome. I release videos every single Friday and sometimes on Wednesdays and Thursdays as well. And so what you're going to want to do is maybe you want to start with the free e-guide. It's my Finding Your Perfect Study Abroad Program e-guide. That's going to be really useful for you. So you are at the beginning of your journey, but you started here. That is great. You're just trying to get all the information. And there are other freebies located below as well. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.